Hello, I'm Todd Miller. This is my presentation of the legal aspects of teacher evaluation for EDL 851. I'll go over 5 things in this presentation. First, I'll give a summary of the articles that we read in this module. Then I'll give a description of the evaluation process and the tool we use in El Dorado. I'll give an overview of several court cases that I felt were relevant to El Dorado's process of evaluation. We'll take a look at some resources that staff are provided by the district, and I'll discuss how I will follow legal issues related to evaluations. First, we read 2 articles related to the legal aspects of evaluation for this module. The first one was an NEA report on the Every Student Succeeds Act and its provisions related to teacher evaluation. And to summarize, the report stated that the federal government was not responsible for evaluating school performance, but the states were, and that the states must use a broad range of factors to judge school performance, not just test scores. They may use evidence of student achievement, but need to be broader and better than that. The state of Kansas leaves teacher evaluation up to each district to determine how that they're going to do that. Also part of the article, NEA recommended that evaluation systems be developed in partnership with teachers and not solely by the state or district's administrators. The second article was from Education Week, titled Teacher Evaluation and Issue Overview. And education evaluation, teacher evaluation, has become a national and state issue for a variety of reasons. And a lot of this is coming out of some research that was done by Danielson and published in a framework for teaching, where there was a recommendation for an increased level of instructional support, effective feedback, and use of data or student growth when evaluating instruction. And NEA has some recommendations on this. Of course, they enjoy the increased feedback to teachers and the increased emphasis on instructional support. There have been some issues along the way, some bumps in the road that trying to identify student growth measures that are applicable to all teachers in all subject areas. And also the NEA has taken issue with some districts tying evaluation to tenure and merit pay. In El Dorado, teachers are evaluated every year in the first 3 years that they're with the districts. That's regardless of their years of experience before coming to us. We conduct evaluations twice in the first 2 years and one more time in the 3rd year. After that, we're on a 4-year cycle, where every 4th year we're evaluated as long as we're in the district. All teachers, regardless of where we are in the evaluation cycle, submit annual goals. We use the E4E evaluation tool. This was developed, at least in part, by the South Central Education Service Center in Clearwater. I think it's known as Orion now. We selected the E4E by having the district leadership team. We've used several different evaluation models. Our DLT is a group of teachers from every building and every grade level, in addition to all the building principals and the central office administrative team. I think that's important that the DLT looked at our evaluation models, because that was an NEA recommendation that teachers be an integral part of that process. And in El Dorado, we certainly were. We looked at 3 evaluation systems: KEEP, which was the state's system, McCrell, and of course the E4E. And we went with the E4E for several reasons, primarily being its focus on instruction and its use of reflective conversation. I'll speak about the reflective conversation piece of the evaluation tool several times in this presentation. Additionally, there was no mandatory requirement for submitting artifacts. as part of the evaluation. We were concerned about the amount of time that the evaluation process would take for administrators and teachers, and the fact that artifacts did not have to be collected, we felt would be a significant time savings. And finally, several of the models required the submission of artifacts, and then those artifacts and the evaluation documents were stored by that third party. That was the case with McCrell. And we were concerned with the privacy of our teachers and went with the E4E because there was no third-party storage of that data. We host all of the evaluation storage on our own district servers. The E4E has 4 components. The learner, which asks that the educator has high expectations and understands individual learner needs and is able to differentiate their instruction based on those needs for each student. The second component is knowledge, asking that the educator not only has a good knowledge of the content that they're responsible for, but also that they can turn that knowledge into meaningful instruction for the kids. Third component is instruction, and this is asking that the educator be able to employ a variety of methods and strategies in their lesson planning so that their instruction and their assessment is engaging and developmentally appropriate and challenging. It also asks that the educator be able to differentiate and modify their instruction based on the data that they collect in the classroom and through assessments. Finally, the fourth component is the professional. The professional component asks that the educator be active in the school community and professional development, and that they give and receive feedback from students and parents, of course, because that's best practices educationally, but also that they're active in the community and forming a connection between school and community. And then each one of those 4 main components is broken down further into multiple standards. So all total, there are about 12 standards that are evaluated. In El Dorado, all teachers submit annual goals. Those goals can be related to any of the 4 components. Mine this year will probably be related to the continuing process I'm going through with this master's program. But it could be looking at different ways to integrate technology further into your curriculum, or ways to differentiate instruction. It's up to the teacher, and the possibilities are pretty limitless. Teachers being evaluated then have a goals conference with their administrator where those goals are reviewed. There are a total of 3 observations that are made throughout the year, and importantly, after each one of those observations, there's a reflective conversation with the administrator. That's really the opportunity for professional development through the evaluation process. Teachers complete a self-evaluation for each observation, and then they have an option to submit artifacts from that lesson plan, student work, data. And then finally, there's a post-evaluation conference with the evaluating administrator. The evaluation document includes a rating from novice to distinguished for each one of the standards, and then a summative narration is written for each one of the standards as well. And in that narration, the evaluator is required to cite the evidence that they're using for the rating. So that really forces both sides of the evaluation, the administrator and the teacher, to be critical and reflective throughout the process. Our district does provide a number of resources to staff to help them with the evaluation process. Most importantly, I think the evaluation information is on the district website where it's readily accessible to all of the teachers. It contains all of the forms, the goal sheets, also a lot of descriptions about the various components of the evaluation tool. We do offer peer mentoring, require peer mentoring for teachers new to the profession. The mentor and the teacher are given training specifically on our evaluation process, and then we're required to have quarterly conversations about evaluations throughout the year. We have annual staff development regarding goals and the evaluation process. Again, those reflective conversations are a resource for the evaluation process. And then NEA will offer support for instruction before you're evaluated. They'll give you assistance through the evaluation process. And then if you're found to be struggling, if you're needing some help in the classroom, they can be a resource for that as well. There are a handful of relevant court cases from the reading in the module that I thought related to El Dorado: Cook versus Bennett, Wagner versus Haslam, and the Houston Teachers versus the Houston School District. And I selected these because all three of them were cases where teachers were challenging the use of student growth measures. The situation really arises, I think, when you have teachers in non-tested subject areas like art and music that are then being evaluated based on student growth in areas that are normally tested, reading and math. I think this is related to El Dorado because our tool does not use student growth as part of the evaluation process. And so I think there's a connection there. I'd be remiss if I didn't include our neighbors. The Flint Hills School District, we share some students with them who participate in activities that they can't offer with us. And Scribner and McNamee were a pair of teachers who had previously had tenure. And then when the state of Kansas did away with tenure in 2014, these two subsequently had poor evaluations and were dismissed in 2015. And the court upheld that tenure couldn't follow along with them. It wasn't a property right that they got to carry forward. And so that was a test of the state's tenure law. So in El Dorado, how do teachers challenge their evaluation? Again, the reflective conversations. I encourage teachers that are being evaluated to be very active in those reflective conversations early in the evaluation process. And if there is something that they disagree with, ask the administrator to focus on that again in future observations and look for more evidence to support. And so they can challenge through those initial reflective conversations. There is a self-evaluation after each one of the observed lessons that the teacher completes and submits as part of the document. They can submit artifacts if they choose. And finally, there can be a written rebuttal attached to the evaluation document where the teacher fully expresses their challenge to the evaluation. If a teacher is dismissed and they feel that is unjust, is there anything they can do? Honestly, there's not much. We do have a policy that they can request, but are not guaranteed a conference with the superintendent or a representative from the board. And if they're a member, ENEA may come in and support them if they're requested to. But again, those two things are going to be pretty limited. It's really up to the teacher to be proactive throughout the evaluation process and try to use that for professional development. So, if I'm a principal, what will I do to help ensure that I'm following legal issues? Number one, I'll rely on the support and guidance of my superintendent, the board, and district legal services. They'll advise me on how to properly conduct evals in our district. Second, I'll stay current by reading research, participating in professional organizations, social media, and stay current with the issues regarding evaluation. I'll focus on instructional support to teachers before the evaluation process, and I'll work to be proactive in handling professional accountability issues so that they don't come up just in the process. I'll be transparent during the evaluation process. I'll document thoroughly and I'll adjust based on previous conversations.